Welcome back. In the last video, we got started writing our first YAML pipeline on Azure DevOps. We wrote a bunch of stages using the YAML on our Visual Studio Code editor. That's the stages we've defined earlier in the last video. The one stage was build Azure pipeline and then download the artifact. If you go to the GUI, you would see that there are a bunch of stages in a successful state that we ran last time. The build Azure pipeline and download. What we're gonna now do is we're gonna be extending our skills to the next level and create bunch of more tasks. Um, what else we did? We started creating the variables. We didn't had much of variables last time, so we stick to only system.debug. Then we got trigger where in which branch we wanna push the changes, then the build agent, and then the stages obviously. So we gonna start from here where we left. We're gonna be utilizing our release and kind of incorporating the same changes which we did and extending them from release to our YAML pipeline. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a init plan and then later on apply. We're gonna utilize the Terraform the YAML code right from here, copy it and paste it just beneath the task. Since you're working on YAML, so indentation is has to be bang on, otherwise it's gonna start complaining as it does at the moment. I'm gonna remove them and identize them as well. Alright, this looks good. The first step is Terraform init, and then the next step what I want to do is I want to do a Terraform apply. So I'm going to create a task, just pick it right from here because the task is going to be same, the command gonna just change. So put it right over here and then put it a display name which is gonna be Terraform plan. Put code, single quote right over here and one over here as well. And then we've got input section which would have a command, and the command would be plan, or rather start with validate, and then working directory, which is I obviously want the same working directory, so put it as same, and then gonna be environment service name Azure RM, which is going to be the subscription. Looks cool. And then this was validate, by the way, validate, and I'm going to copy this again and use it for plan as well. Make sure the indentation is right. Display name has to be just beneath the task. Alright, this looks okay. I am going to open my terminal, do a get into the working directory, do a get status, get add, get commit -m, added some more tasks, get push, and once this is being pushed, Azure DevOps gonna pick up the changes automatically because we are pushing to the master branch, and that's what we have told Azure DevOps, that whenever something has been pushed, and you can see that the pipeline has been triggered automatically. The first stage is wherein it builds the pipeline, it builds the artifact, and then in the second stage rather, it starts downloading the code and then do the actual run the actual code, which is Terraform init, plan, and validate. So the first one is done, I guess, or it is still being, it's on to its last step. This is being done now. It's going to move on to the next stage, which is going to be Terraform download code, preparing the parameters at the moment, and you see there are by default 50 parameters like continue error, which is false, which means that the condition is if one of the tasks fails, it's not gonna let the other task run, which means if you go to your pipeline, if this task fail, this task won't be able to run because this is kind of dependent on the above one. We're going to learn how you can make them independent and done it. This is not good. We do have an error. It says that alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to replace. If you notice why the task has failed, what we've done is in the working directory we forgot to replace the actual working directory. This was the case in our last to last video. Not in this case. We are just using the system.default working directory, and that's what we're gonna be using. We're gonna push the code again, and hopefully this time we shouldn't have any error. Let's go back to our pipeline and wait for it to run. Alright, so the initialization and the plan and validate is successful. Uh, the error was primarily because of the working directory right over here. You would have noticed that in when we had a typo or when we have one of the tasks got failed, uh, Azure pipeline then executed the next set of pipeline, which means if init was failed, it didn't even go to the validator or plan, because if you notice continue on error is false, which means it won't continue if one of the tasks has an error. This is the by default conditions Azure pipeline has. However, if you think that init is not dependent on validate or plan, or in your case it could be different, all of the tasks are not dependent to each other, what you want is even if it fails or cancels, you want the next step to run. How do you do that? You have something called as conditions, as you can see on your screen, which says then even if it conditions are succeed or fail, it doesn't matter, just run the next step. What we're gonna do is we are going to pick this one, pick this para parameter right over here, and go to our pipeline. So we've got validate and plan. We should have mentioned plan it over here. So what we want is we want to put a condition that even if the previous step has succeeded or failed, doesn't matter, just run the step. So I'm gonna put a typo right over here so that the step kind of fails. Alright, the validate should fail, and even if the validate has failed, the plan should be executed. Let's go ahead and push our changes and let's see how it kind of behaves. Alright, the code has been pushed. Let's go to our pipeline. It should have the pipeline triggered. Yep. Go to the first one. You notice there are by default parameters available like continue error. The timeout minute in for a particular task is 60 minutes, which means if a task has got into an infinite loop, until you cancel it within 60 minutes, it's going to keep on running. And by default task is 60 minutes. So if you want to put a timeout onto your task, you could do that using as well, using the timeout flag. So the first step was successful because that's pretty small and there's nothing much in it. So the next one is the download code, and has got Terraform init, validate and plan. You see that the timeout in minute is 60 and cancel timeout minute is 5. You've got maximum concurrency, which means at same point of time how many parallel job should be running. In our case, it's just 0, which means if one of the parallel task is already running, it won't even start the next one. So you'll have to gotta kill the first one which is in running mode. So we've got the download artifact, then we've got the initialization. The validate should failed. You would notice that even if the validate has failed, it has skipped to the next one and plan was run successful. Validate was failed and the plan was didn't even stop it. It still was running. So that's how you kind of put a validation, put a conditions onto your step. I'm going to replace it with a plan now. And what I'm going to do is I am going to put another task and put it into a different stage, because I want to make sure that apply is on a different stage, and we're going to learn how you can apply a, a custom workflow approval workflow as well. So let's suppose you've got a plan, and until plan you want your code to run automatically. However, there are some sort of features or some sort of code where you want somebody to review it, and once he or she has reviewed it within your team, then only that code should be pushed on a particular environment or infrastructure. In our case, we don't want to apply to be automatically applied. Rather, we want some of the senior member in the team to have a look at our plan, and if he or she is okay with the plan, we can go ahead and make the changes. So what we could do is we can use something called as workflow approval in Azure DevOps, and that's what we're going to learn. So what we're going to do is we're going to have one more stage right over here, and now we're going to learn how you could have an approval workflow. So what I want is I want to apply the Terraform, so I'm going to write an apply, and then I'm going to have a display name which is going to be apply tf, and then I've got a jobs, and then what I want is a deployment, apply, and underneath the deployment I should have a display name. Display name should be apply tf code, and then the environment. This is the key part, which wherein you would mention that which environment you want to apply. I would call it as a dev environment, and as soon as you define the environment right over here, you go back to your Azure pipeline and go to the environment section, create an environment with the name of dev, select none, and then click on the three dots in approval and checks, and you select the approval and give it the name of the team, group, or user. In this case, it's just a user. So I'm going to use the AKS DevOps Shan, which means anything which is going to be applied for this particular stage has to be approved by this particular person. So I'm going to create it, go back to my pipeline, strategy. These are some of the mandatory parameter, then run once, and then deploy, and then we've got steps, and underneath the steps I am going to copy the task right from here and put it over here. Make sure the indentation is right. Alright, the indentation looks absolutely fine. Instead of plan, I'm gonna do an apply, and what I'm gonna do is all looks okay. Now I'm gonna fire up my terminal again, do a git add, git commit, git push, and now we're gonna see the magic. Whatever we have defined over here, we're gonna see how it kind of reacts when it goes to the GUI. So the pipeline has been triggered. Now we see that it has gotten this three stages. build, deploy, and then apply. So the first one is pretty basic. We've run it multiple times and now we know what it's going to do. It's going to actually build the code for us, generate the artifact, has some of the by default parameters like continue on error, which was false, but we've done it true for some of the cases. Running the first step, and then it's gonna go to the second stage. The first step is now completed. It has gone to the second stage now. The second stage, and we've defined the task right over here: init, validate, and plan. Init is complete, validate is gonna fail. That doesn't matter. It's gonna plan it. Now it's kind of planning and it's generated a plan, and it is done with the second stage. Alright, since this was failed, we could not apply this one because this hasn't got the flag that even if it's failed or true. So what we're gonna do is we are going to comment out this validate one, and I'm gonna push it again. Go back to our pipeline and see. We're gonna give it a few more seconds so that it reaches the second stage. Alright, so we've got the second stage completed right over here. You will see that all of the tasks are completed. Until as all of the tasks are completed, it's not going to go to the next one. However, you would see that the third stage, which was apply TF, is still grayed out. Why is that so? If you go to the third stage, you will see that it has got a flag called as waiting. If you click on the stage right over here, it shows that one approval needs your review before this run can continue to apply TF, which means you got to review it, and once you're happy what changes it's gonna apply. So if you go to the download previous stage and if you go to the plan, you see that this is all it's gonna do. This is all it's gonna create the infrastructure. In your case, if it's application, it could be deploying set of new bugs or new set of features onto the production environment. Once you are happy with the changes with the unit test or integration test, and you could go ahead and review it and say happy with the changes, make your comments, and just put in approve, and this is gonna start applying the changes right onto your infrastructure or application what you've been dealing with. And it's going to start within few seconds, and it's going to start applying the infrastructure. If you go to the Microsoft Azure, you would see that the Azure resource group has only got one resource group at the moment. However, once this is successfully started to plan up and apply, it's going to start making the changes. Alright, the apply is been started now. The stage has been initialized, the artifact has been downloaded, and it's gonna apply it. It should have been apply instead of plan. Requires configuration to be present. Applying without configuration. Obviously, you need to have a configuration in that case. In our case, there hasn't been any configuration, so all it has got is nothing to apply. So this is how you kind of got your approvals and checks you can apply before deploying your bugs on your production environment or applying any new features on your infrastructure. And yeah, that's pretty much all. I'll see you in the next video with some more of the features of Azure DevOps. Thank you.